welcoming and accompanying our brothers and sisters with same-sex attraction.
If we're going to talk about our freedom and our dignity, we also have to accept our responsibility. Everyone is called to live chastely, no matter what their state in life. And biblically, there's just no other answer than, sexual intimacy is for marriage and for the procreation of children. Anyone who is not in a lawful marriage is not to engage in that activity. There are some people who never find their way to marriage for lots of reasons. Some because they have same-sex attraction, but others just because they never find a spouse. But all of us, are called to live chastely. And I'm a celibate priest, and I've been faithfully celibate all my priesthood. Thanks be to God. I don't boast. I simply say thanks be to God. He's kept me in that beautiful way, and I'm happy. I'm fulfilled. Life is about more than having sex.
Yeah, in terms of equal in dignity, equal in responsibility, you talk to priests and those who are there about how to preach or how to communicate to your congregation and help them understand these things. What are the obstacles that priests are experiencing in terms of being able to lay hold of this and speak clearly about it?
Well, I think first of all, there's a reticence to talk about controversial issues, and there's a reticence to talk about matters regarding sexuality in a large congregation where there's children. But I think at some level we have to get over that and we have to speak clearly. But I would say that we always need to be, the other thing we're concerned that we're not perceived as singling out the gay community, those with same-sex attraction. I never mention this issue when I preach on it without also mentioning fornication and adultery and pornography.
So you put it in a context, in the context of the church's mind and heart.
Right.
And where's your starting point then when you do that?
The beauty and the glory of human sexuality and marriage is always the starting point. We're not preaching just against sin, we're preaching virtue. And I think we fall into that mistake. Thomas, for example, in the Summa does not have a section on sin. He has the virtues. And then sin falls out as an excess or a defect related to a virtue. So we start with the virtue, which is the beauty of human sexuality, the beauty of chastity. And then from there, we can then begin to speak about, where we fall into defects or excesses regarding these things.
And so the equal and dignity portion of it, your concern is to communicate that the church recognizes the equal dignity in everybody, and we're not singling out a particular group of people in some way as lacking dignity that ought to be recognized.
Correct.
And that's the positive side of what the church's kind of ministry or relationship, what we meant by welcoming and accompanying.
Yes.
There are brothers and sisters, right? But at the same time, there's a reticence to call people to full responsibility, which means chastity. Now, this is kind of obvious, but just for the sake of some of our listeners who may be scratching their head and said, what exactly do you mean by chastity? I mean, what is chastity?
Right. Chastity is to live appropriately according to one's state in life, their sexuality. And again, for the married couple, this means that sexual intimacy is a very great gift to them. But even there's struggles. There's struggles that married couples face to stay faithful in mind and heart. Even if they don't stray bodily, they might, again, be their minds maybe elsewhere. And, so it's to really have an affection of the heart and really grow in deep intimacy for your spouse. For the rest of us who are not married, it means to refrain from all genital sexual contact and if one is not able to date or whatever, we just, we live in good friendships, healthy friendships. And if one is able to date, but they date chastely with the idea they're looking for a partner in holy matrimony.
Yeah. One of the consistent criticisms that the church gets in the area of same-sex attraction is to say, well, then you're condemning these people to loneliness for the rest of their life.
Right.
And it's just, in what way then can the church's teaching chastity apply to this situation? How can that be loving? In what way is the church's teaching loving?
Yeah. Well, first of all, it's loving because it's speaking the truth. And the truth is, to speak the truth is always loving. It's not always easy to hear. When I go to the doctor and he says, you got to lose more weight. I don't like to hear it, but that is the loving thing to say if it's true. So, but I would also say loneliness is not, it's a human problem. I know married people who are lonely. The marriage isn't the answer to loneliness per se. Happiness has to be an inside job. And I just, again, know many married people who have wonderful marriages, some who struggle, but these all these struggles are human struggles, and we all have them. That's why we're equal in dignity. And I don't think there's any human being that doesn't have lots of issues they're struggling with. And the idea to find a church that has answers and points the way and helps, rather than you got to be here instantly. But we walk with people and get them in the right direction.
You connected truth and love together. Say more about that.
Yeah, in fact, Cardinal Hickey, who ordained me, his motto was Veritatem in Caritate, the truth and charity. Because only the truth will set us free. And if we really want people to be free, if we really love them, we want them to be free. And the only way to true freedom is through, the truth itself. And Jesus himself, always connected this. And he's come to speak the truth, which sets us free. And freedom is the ultimate, to be completely free in Christ Jesus and to be free one day with God forever in heaven. That's the goal, and that's love, and that's always the goal that we have for everybody.
So the truth then, you often hear people talk these days about, well, yeah, I get it, but that's your truth, Father.
Yeah.
That's not my truth. And aren't you imposing your perspective? Because really, what more can we have? Each person has a perspective.
Right.
And who has the full truth of things anyway? How's that even possible?
Right.
That's the kind of the milieu we live in. How do you respond to something like that?
Well, I mean, I usually try to back up a few steps, and I use the Socratic method when people say, "Well, why do you say that there is no truth? Aren't you actually announcing a truth when you say that?" I mean, but without getting into a long apologetic about that, I really think that we've got to finally help people discover that in their heart they're really seeking the truth. They want answers. It doesn't pertain to us to just walk around like space cadets thinking, well, that may or may not be a chair. We would have not gotten to the moon and back and all the magnificence of science if we really lived that proclamation that there really is no truth, or that truth is pretty relative, because that's just not the way the world works. Gravity's going to work whether you want to proclaim it's true or not. It's just, it hits you. And at some level, people know that's a lie. There is a truth. We want answers, and that's our quest. So I always try to put people back in touch with their heart. Really, honestly, can you really believe that? You don't live that way. You don't live like, well, it says it's 8 o'clock, but who's to say? Well, no. I mean, you got to get on your plane, or you got to be at work.
Right.
And so I think that we have to finally engage people.
How would you help people? How would you help people lay hold of the truth about human sexuality? What's the easiest way to show them design, purpose, whatever it is, something fixed, something real about it?
Well, that's increasingly difficult today, but I would say that I really think the theology of the body is critical, and we've got to hone our skills and find quick ways to simplify a rather complex teaching. But fundamentally, our bodies speak to us the truth of sexuality. I was made for another. And that other have to have certain qualities. I don't want to be too explicit, but certain parts fit and others don't, and some things work and some don't. And even if one doesn't reach marriage in the traditional sense, such as myself, I've lived celibate. I'm still in a nuptial relationship. The church is my bride. We're all meant to live in relationship to the other. And when it comes to genital sexual contact, it's clear that the biology and the anatomy must be respected. And it points us to, the purpose of sexuality, which is procreation.
There seems to be confusion, or let's say, the church sometimes, or leaders in the church, say things publicly about the issue of same-sex attraction or homosexuals living together in relationships. I heard a cardinal say not long ago from Europe say, well, it's better that a homosexual person come out of a very active lifestyle with a range of partners and live with one partner.
Yeah. And
that's a positive, and that's moving toward virtue. And you made the statement as kind of a pastoral way to approach the question. And it just caused tremendous amount of confusion, because essentially you're still promoting a certain disorder, right? In human relationships. What do you think about that? How would you respond to that?
Well, now let me be careful, because we're talking about a cardinal and I'm in the chain of command.
Right.
But simply to address that type of a thinking would be that we have to proclaim the whole truth, and we have to point to people. You can't just say, well, for example, if you give me 5 directions to your house, and I say, well, if I follow just 4 of them, aren't I okay? No, I'm still lost. If I take a left where I should have taken a right, I'm not going to get to your house. I have to follow all 5 of them. We can't simply take part of the Ten Commandments or part of the moral tradition that the Lord has given us and think we're going to find our way home or find our way to true happiness. So we really do have to point to people and say, look, this is the way, walk in it, without deviation. And if you do fall, get back up and get right back on the right track. But you can't take 4 out of 5 directions to, say, your house and think I'm going to get there. I'm not.
Yeah.
Got to follow all 5.
Yeah, it just seems to be an area that the church continues to try to struggle. I mean, the clarity is there in the church's teaching. The pastoral application is what seems to be a little confusing. And I think there's so much clarity in laying hold of stepping back and say, what is the truth about human sexuality? Is there a truth there? Is there something that the Lord revealed to us and a design there? So, Father, I'd like to shift our conversation a little bit to another topic.